So, Ghostbusters is basically regarded as a classic these days. And if you grew up in my generation, it was basically a phenomenon. You know, I mean, the movies, the cartoon, the toys, we all had them, we all loved them, pretty much. Ghostbusters 2, on the other hand, is not as well regarded as the original film. It seems to be a bit divided. I always loved it. I distinctly remember going as a kid to the actual theater to see it, being very excited, and walking out very happy. But apparently critics did not care for it. It did have a huge opening weekend, but then of course Batman came out the following week and kind of trounced it, and that sort of buried it, and it was ruled a flop, which I think is a little ridiculous considering it broke records when it came out. But, you know, I mean, I tried to watch it this time around with a more critical eye to see if I could see what it was that people didn't like, what their complaints were. And, yeah, I can kind of see it. I mean, it certainly doesn't match up to the original. I'll say that. I think they did a good job of, you know, trying to figure out where would these guys be 5 years later. I think they came up with some really fun responses for that. And I like that a lot of that stuff ties in to what ends up happening on the plot. You know, the guy on Peter's show says that the world's going to end on New Year's and that kind of stuff. It's just, and Egon's doing the experiments with the emotional response and all that, which ties into the slime later. It's just a nice little touch, and it's a sort of foreshadowing for what's to come. But I'll admit, I think the main problem is really Vigo and Janos. I mean, they're just, as villains go, they're really poor, they're really cheesy. Janos' accent of, you know, miscellaneous Eastern European just doesn't go over well these days, and Vigo's just, I mean, he's just generic evil dictator. They practically stole his death from Rasputin. He's not that interesting, he's not that compelling, and you add to that the slime, and okay, yeah, I can see it. You know, it's, as a kid, you watch it, and I don't think you see anything wrong with it. I think it's over the top, it's silly, and it works, and that's why we loved it so much as kids. But as an adult, I can see why, for a lot of people, that probably didn't work. I'd still think the slime is okay. I'm not really bothered by the silliness of the, you know, making people angry or making people ultra happy. I think it works for the movie. I mean, yeah, it doesn't really make sense how they can bring the Statue of Liberty to life when all they could do was make the toaster jiggle a little bit, but who cares? You know, and they throw the NES Advantage controller in there. It's fun. It's all very silly, but it works within the movie, and I roll with it. I don't mind too much. I mean, really what it comes down to and why this movie is still fun is the performances of the main cast. You know, Bill Murray's fantastic. You just know he was probably improvising a lot of those scenes. Dan Aykroyd, Harold Ramis, oh my god. And Ernie Hudson too. You know, I mean, they're great. I mean, I remember the one thing I didn't like as a kid was the, oh gosh, I drank 2 shots before I did this, and now my brain doesn't want to work. Rick Moranis and Annie Potts. The way that they end up getting together, that always bugged me because she clearly loved Egon in the cartoon and in the beginning, in the first movie. So it was like, wait a minute, no, you're changing things, that's not fair. But their little side relationship there is cute. I mean, they practically act like teenagers, and it's just silly. It's just a simple little aside, but I don't know, it's entertaining. One thing about watching this movie as an adult, especially when you loved Egon as much as I loved Egon, is holy crap, his creepiness is turned up to 11. you know, as a kid, you don't get it. I mean, he said epididymis, and I assumed he meant like epidermis. I don't know why I assumed those were like the same thing, but yeah, if you look up epididymis, no, that's not what he's talking about. And then, of course, he sleeps with the slime, and he's so weird. But Ramis plays it. Oh my God, it's so funny. He is just fantastic in this movie. Like, I mean, I think Bill Murray probably is the best of them all. You know what? That's my 5-minute timer, but screw it. We're gonna go a couple extra minutes. You know, but Ramis is just so funny, and I just, like, I mean, especially now that he's gone now, it really just stuck with me, and I just really enjoyed everything. The scene where they're breaking up the street, all three of them are just so great. I really like the scene where they go under the tunnels and Winston gets hit by the train and everything. I mean, Ernie plays it so over the top, but he plays it so well that it's really entertaining. And I think, you know, and more than anything, that's, if you like the first film, I don't really see how you can, like, really discredit the second one, because it's still these characters and it's still really great. The court scene is just as good as the original. There's no doubt about that. They really tapped into the spookiness and the action and the comedy of the first film with that scene. I can understand a lot of the other ones don't really measure up. There's really no scare moments. You know what I mean? But it's still just, it's still more Ghostbusters, and what more could you want? I can see at this point, I don't really think we need a Ghostbusters 3 in the way that most people think of a Ghostbusters 3. I mean, especially now that Ramis is gone, it's just not going to happen. I know they keep talking about possibly doing like a new guard kind of thing, and that's fine. Why not? Give it a shot. But I don't blame Murray for not wanting to come back and do it again, because you're just, too many years have passed. It's not going to happen. But I think, you know, the 5-year gap for this one, it still worked, and I think they still tapped into those characters and they still had a lot of fun with it. And for that reason, it's still worth watching, and it's still a lot of fun. Murray's great, Ramis is great, Aykroyd's great. You know, it may all be really silly, it may not be as strong a film, but it's still one that's worth revisiting every few years or so. Because it's just a lot of fun, and there's nothing wrong with a lot of fun, right?